Welcome everyone to Power Rainbows and our first ever episode of the Professor Pride podcast. I am of course your host, Professor Pride. And today on our first episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking about Super Straight. We're going to be talking about adoption agencies, Blue's Clues being a lesbian. We're going to be talking about our production schedule and how crazy it's going to get in the next couple months here. We're going to be talking about a whole lot of things and different trans bills that are happening right now, the Equality Act, Dr. Rachel Levine, a whole bunch to come in today's episode, so make sure you're staying tuned for all of that. Now, if you're here just for one or two different topics, because this is going to be a podcast, and because it's going to be a longer form video on our channel, we want to give you the option to scroll to whatever topic you want to learn more about. So in the play bar at the bottom of your screen right there, you can scroll on the play bar to actually get to each and every topic you want to talk about or you want to learn about. So if there's a topic that interests you, you can scroll along that play bar and find the topic, go right to that section, and that way you can hear us talk about that specific thing. Now, first, I want to kind of normally this time of month, we have a live stream on our channel, and they're fantastic. Normally I get to really interact with you guys a whole lot and answer all of your great questions during that live stream. Unfortunately, last month when we did a live stream, it kind of killed our internet. And it killed it for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. We just didn't have any internet almost at all in our entire office. So because of that just completely killing our internet last month, we decided to try something new on our channel and post a podcast in a video form. Because we have a new camera now with a Canon XA40, we can do longer form content finally, so why not kind of do a longer form video like this? So that's what we decided to do this month. Let us know in the comments down below if you like this or not. All of that feedback is incredibly grateful. We use all of that feedback so much on our channel to determine what we're going to do next. So let us know in the comments down below if you like this or not, or make sure you're smashing that like button and you're hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss out on new episodes. So, because there's more to come in the podcast, it's just how long or how many episodes we're going to have. That's determined by you. Of if you guys like this or not. Last year we had a series on our channel once a month where we covered LGBTQ news of that month. And that's similar to what we're going to do in this format, but with that old format, it was highly scripted. It took a week to prepare that, and it did so much editing that it went crazy, and I completely understand it. This year, it can't come back because it's just so much work compared to what our workload is now for other episodes. We just can't do that anymore, at least not in our current form with the staff that we have. But we're doing a lot more content this month than we did last March around this time. And part of that is because of the pandemic, where we just have more time here, where there's not events happening for my personal company to go and film, but it's also partly because of you guys. I mean, right now, our members and our subscribers and all of the great supporters that we have allow us to do this entire show and allow us to do as many episodes as we're doing, and to not just put out content because we want to put out content, or not just provide it in a full HD format with great audio quality or whatever, but we're able to do that because we're able to provide quality information and accurate information, which is most important to us. Because I can care less about the quality of the video or the audio. I want the information to be accurate in all of our episodes, because it's supposed to be an educational platform where you can come to get quality advice and accurate information. That way you can take this away and go, I now know that my gender is valid. I now know that my sexuality is valid. So that's what we're here for. And I know with our previous kind of stream on unboxing our brand new camera, some people might have taken away from that we're just after the money on this. And we're just after brand new equipment. And I'm a gearhead. I understand that. Like, this is my life since I was 9 years old. I've owned a company that like just went all out on equipment because I understand the equipment makes my job easier. But at the same time, I'm not after the money on this. It's like, yeah, it's great that we now have a couple $1,000 camera to do the show with and to do all of the great programming with. But at the end of the day, the information and the education we provide is far exceeding our standards of like what we need in video and audio quality. So it's great that we can provide both of that now. So that's sort of like the first thing, but also the new camera that we got allows us to do not just longer form content, but more content, because our members kind of know what's happening right now behind the scenes that we're sharing of what we're actually making in the production studios and what we're actually like filming and interviewing. They know all of that. But we actually started planning out July already, and it's March right now. So like, it's crazy to think that we're already that many months ahead of scheduling our episodes out and knowing here's what date this video is going to air, and it's March. Like we're planning 4 or 5 months or more in advance of these videos to know exactly what needs to happen, what our research team needs to be working on, because now we have I believe 7 people working here at the show. So it's crazy, plus moderators on YouTube and everything. Like our team is growing. Our team is growing very rapidly, which I love, but in an effort to make sure everyone's doing their job and make sure everyone's like, by the way, none of those people are paid. It's not like we're paying 7 people's full-time salary to work here. I don't want you thinking like, wow, Matt's making all this money. Like, no, that it's every one of them is like just volunteering their time to help me. And we have an episode that is airing very soon with a good friend of mine, Chris Krasnowski, who's an expert on a certain topic that we're going to be talking about on Star Trek. And so he came on the show, but I bought him pizza that night, and that was his pay for doing that episode with me. So it's not like people are like getting paid hundreds of dollars to go script these things. Like, no, it's like, hey, I'll buy you a pizza while you're here in the studio and while you're filming with me. So it's YouTube isn't that great. And we talk about that in a future episode too of, our channel is demonetized a lot compared to other channels of our same size just because we're talking about LGBTQ topics. So we have a video coming very soon on that as well, that'll explain that in more detail. But with all those team members now, it's like I want to be able to, one of the biggest things I'm learning is how to produce a show of this size and how to lead that team so I can say, hey, why don't you work on this episode coming in May while I work on this episode that's coming in June, and we'll start scripting those out or start researching them. That way, by the time we're scripting that, we already have all the information all in a booklet that's, all concise for us to work on that script. So it's very much a process of I'm learning as we go here, but also, leading a team is of this size on a consistent weekly basis is something kind of new to me. So I appreciate all of our members and all of our viewers for just like coming along that ride and understanding that whole process. So with all that said, there's a lot to come on the show, and I'm really, really excited. I'm especially excited because we're adding brand new episodes with a mini series on our channel for Fun with Flags, where some of the biggest episodes on our channel were about the 94 pride flags and what they all mean. And a few of our audience members asked, why don't you do individual episodes on what each gender identity or which each sexuality means, and go more in depth than that video did. And that video, the 2 biggest videos on our channel about pride flags are monumentally important to not just our channel in its growth, if you're just looking at the numbers. But I think they're really important because in those episodes, we've had countless people go, well, I don't really know what my sexuality or gender is yet. And then they watch that video and they're like, you know what, that definition describes me perfectly. I think that's what my sexuality is. I think that's what my gender is, And so it's helped a lot of people in that way, even myself, where when we did the 94 Pride Flags episode, I talked about a flag called the demisexual flag. And in it, I'm like just reading off a script thinking, hey, I'm just an educator. I'm just providing this information. And then months later, I watched that episode back and I'm just like, wait a minute, that definition describes me. I'm demisexual and I'm gay. And like, it's so cool where it's helping not just our students, but also helping team members and myself where, you don't really realize on the show how much the show and all of you help me in return. And that's why I get excited making this show. Because not just are we helping everyone else that's watching, but we're also learning ourselves. And I think that's one of the reasons why when you tune into an episode, all of a sudden, you see me smiling ear to ear because I'm really excited about the information. And I'm just like, that I think comes across. And I think that's why our viewers kind of like our content a lot more than if I was just in this monotone voice reading off a script. Like that's boring, for 15 minutes. So I think the fact that I'm really genuinely excited about this and the research process is one of the most, one of the funnest things and genuinely one of the best things I do. And I get really excited to just follow research down that little cave that it leads me down and just like, oh my God, this is where it's going. I want to follow up on that piece of information. Let me read that entire book to go and get this one little quote out and make sure it's in context. I really get excited over that. So I think that comes across on the camera. I think a lot of people appreciate that. But I'm learning on the show too. But with that Fun with Flags, Pride Flags episode, I think you're right. Let's go with that. And so our producers and I have all decided to start a mini series on our channel. We don't know how often it will air, but we think it might be like a bi-weekly series on the channel where we can go every other Monday with like a Fun with Flags. What does the LGBTQ flag mean? Let's dive into the history of it, where it came from, what each color on it represents, what does the pattern represent, who designed it, what variations has it had over the years, and what does it mean to the community? What does that sexuality or gender identity mean? Even let's go as far as to interview someone that is represented by that flag and learn what that flag's all about and what it means to them. So I think that series can go incredible for the channel, but I want your opinions in the comments down below. What do you think of that new mini-series? Are you going to enjoy that, or is it something that you just don't want to watch? Or, let us know in the comments down below. I really want to know your opinions on that because it's exciting, but I don't want to produce it if no one's going to watch it, if no one's going to like it, So that's where we're at with that series. And it's really exciting because no one really knew about that until now. The producers and I have been talking about it for a little bit now. And I think it's a really cool idea to run with for a little bit and see where it goes. So I think the potential for the show is, limitless, and we're going to go in many different directions over the years. And I appreciate all of you being on the ride for it. And being in the classroom, a part of this, and learning with me as we grow here and build this community and build this safe place for the LGBTQ. And talking about safe places, I think the next logical story we would talk about is the super straight movement. Because if you look at this, a new trend on TikTok, and I kind of want to just start off with where it came from, what it's all about before we get into my thoughts on it. Because a lot of people have been asking us in the comments what I think about it. And yeah, it's not a good opinion I have of this whole movement. So it's sort of like my same opinion on the, walk away movement. It's like a horrible movement. But let's dive into how stupid this is, right? I might just, like, instead of calling it super straight, call it super stupid. Because homophobes and transphobic people have a very lower bar of education than the rest of the world does. It's just statistically and scientifically speaking how things work. And I know I was condemned in the comments the other day for it. Someone said, like, hey, we can use without your opinion here because you didn't have to call transphobic people stupid. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have to, but at the same time, scientifically speaking, there has been studies on this, and the education level of transphobic people and homophobic people is not the IQ, is not the level of an ally of our community. So it's like, I'm not just stating my opinion, I'm stating facts. It's my opinion, sure, but it's also a fact. And science is fun that way. When you follow the facts in science like a reporter does, it's very fun to, like, have your opinion align with the facts and to be molded by what the facts are. So that's sort of the way I make my opinions on something. So anyway, the super stupid movement. It all started on TikTok, apparently. So this guy goes on TikTok and he's like, I'm so tired of being condemned by all these people that when I'm trying to date someone, I'm not looking for a transgender woman. And this guy's like, I'm straight. I'm, from what it seems, supportive of the transgender community in the video. But he's like, I just don't want to date transgender women. And I'm just not attracted to the genitalia of a potential partner that hasn't gone post-op, and so he makes this crude joke in the video, and he even makes fun of it himself that he's coming out, even though he understands it's not an actual sexual orientation, and he even says that in the video, and he's like, so here's the thing, I'm super straight, and I only date women that are cisgender. So, okay, like, whatever, fine. But also, you mentioned in the video that all these people are condemning you. All these people are after you because you won't date a transgender woman. Who are all those people? Because all of his fans on TikTok went, we've never condemned you for that. Who said that, Like, no one said that to you. And you're not even, in his follow-up video, he never cited anything and said, here's what I'm talking about. Here's screenshots of people doing it. Like, he's never cited his source for saying that people are condemning him for not dating trans women. So it's just basically his own mind going, hey, I'm not really into trans women. And there's been this debate in the coming days after that of, is it transphobic to not want to date a transgender person? Would it be transphobic of me to not want to date a trans man compared to a cisgender man? And there's been this debate. And it's a valid debate, to be fair. And it's something that we can talk about with trans activists on the show soon here, where I think they can offer a lot more insight. But what happened to this movement was all of a sudden there's a certain political party that started using super straight as their slogan. They're like, hey, I'm super straight, because they sort of, in the debate between transgender people and allies of the community and between transphobic people, they sort of realized super straight was being used as this transphobic remark, of, hey, I'm super straight, I don't like trans people. And so there's a certain political party that started using that as their, hey, I'm super straight too, don't forget I'm transphobic, right? Like, they were really terrible, and like, you found out this is transphobic in some way, shape, or form, and you're like, hey, don't forget about me over here, like, first off, how dare you? And secondly, you could have just shut up and no one would have cared. Instead, you decide to open your mouth and be hateful towards an entire group of people, that makes up like 1 point something percent of the population. Stupid on you. But anyway, all of a sudden, the original people that said super straight are like, oh, wait, this is being used as a transphobic thing? We didn't mean it transphobically. Like, I don't want to be labeled as transphobic because I'm still an ally of the community. Like, who knew that super straight would be used as a homophobic and transphobic thing? Who in the world knew, right? And they were so baffled by this, right? All of a sudden, unsurprisingly in America, all these neo-Nazis started picking up on the super straight movement. And they're like, hey, if you abbreviate super straight, you know what you get? SS. You know what SS stands for? It's a symbol of the Nazi Party back in the day. And so all of a sudden, neo-Nazis started using, hey, super straight SS, and they come up with this logo that's in the shape of the Nazis symbol for SS, right? And all of a sudden, the political party that was now using this as a transphobic and homophobic thing, they're like, wait, we don't want to be associated with Nazis, do we? Oh, I formally make an apology because this super straight movement, I didn't know that SS could be interpreted as a neo-Nazi thing, and I don't want to be associated with Nazis. It's like, you literally shared hashtag SS on Twitter, and now you're like, I didn't know that was a Nazi thing. I've never read a history book in my entire life to know that. Like, what mentality is that, right? And so all these hate groups start picking up on this, and they're like, you know what? Nazis didn't like transgender people or homosexual people either. So let's dive into that because they're hate groups. And so these people, in their infinite wisdom of creating memes and hateful interactions on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and Instagram, they decide, you know what's going to take us and separate our movement from the Nazi Party? If we just take a Nazi symbol and we change the colors, because then people cannot associate our parties at all. It's totally going to make us different, right? Totally. So anyway, they're like, let's just change the colors. And so they decided to change the colors of the SS logo of the Nazi Party to black and orange. Now, if you're not familiar, black and orange, and the specific black and orange that they used in all of their memes, they decide to use the colors of a adult film website, Pornhub. And what they don't realize is that years ago, this adult film website put out its own study and telling people like what people are searching for most. Well, it turns out one of the most searched things on this adult film website are transgender people, from being searched by straight people. And so it's like, all right, if you're gonna use two colors, maybe don't choose the two colors of the company that's literally statistically and scientifically backing up how much the straight people admire transgender people, right? Maybe don't use those two colors. Now, another little tidbit of information was they, in their infinite wisdom of these hate groups, forgot these two colors are not just the colors of this adult film website, they're also the colors of an application on your phone called Grindr, which is a gay dating app. Well, that's fun information to know. So all these hate groups are like sharing all these super straight memes on their social media, and they're like, please share all this hateful stuff. And it's like, your symbol of the super straight movement literally has the colors of the Grindr app of the gay movement. Congratulations, transphobic and homophobic people. You won, I guess. Right? Now, a friend of mine and I have been having this debate for the past couple of days, and it's a legitimate question of, well, if you don't want to date transgender people, is that transphobic? If I saw this great article on it of it could not be considered transphobic if you just don't like that genitalia, and that's sexual attraction, because there are 7 spectrums of sexual orientation, right? And so if you say I'm emotionally attracted to, for my instance, men, and I'm sensually attracted to men, so on and so forth, I'm attracted to men, but the thing is that I'm also physically and sexually attracted to men, right? And so for me, if we were just having this as an example stake, just for the purpose of this debate, right? I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form this is me, but for the purposes of this example, if I said, okay, I'm physically and sexually attracted to men, in theory, I could say, well, I'm only attracted to transgender men after their post-bottom surgery, right? Because that's what I'm physically attracted to. And there's a valid point behind that. And so I think that's a debate we can have with the transgender person on the show, of asking them how they feel about it. And I think it's by an individual basis too, to a certain extent here. But it's also this very interesting dichotomy to study in research terms of, like, is it or isn't it transphobic? Now, there's this great article that outlines it in much more detail of basically if you're on a date with somebody and no one has said that they're trans, like you're on this date with somebody, and like if I was going out with a guy for a first date and we were having a great time and we were at dinner and we really were connecting to each other, and all of a sudden at the end of the date, we share a kiss or something like that, and it's really going well, and I say to him, hey, are you free again this Saturday? Because I want to hang out again, And he says to me, well, the thing is I am available on Saturday, but I kind of feel the need to tell you this before we get to a second date or something. By the way, I'm trans. Now, if in that instance, this article outlines it much better than I will here, but if in that instance, all of a sudden I say, hey, all right, date's over, I don't want to go on a second date with you, solely based on that fact alone, well, then that is transphobic. By and large and through, that is transphobic because it's solely based on that, right? Now, I probably wouldn't say that because I'm demisexual, so I need an emotional connection to someone first before a sexual attraction is built. And so I'm different than that. So I want an emotional connection with someone first. And so if that's already built, then we can go on that second date. But for purposes of our example here, if all of a sudden I said, no, I don't want to go on a second date as soon as I found that out, but a moment earlier I was fine with a second date and I was asking about it, well, that's transphobic, And I think that's the difference for a lot of people. If all of a sudden you find this out and it changes everything, then that's something in your head going, hey, this is wrong to date a trans person. And that mentality and that opinion is wrong to have. That's the transphobic argument to have, right? But in the same instance, if you start talking initially in your first comment or two with each other, and if they volunteer that information right away and they're like, hey, by the way, I'm trans, and then you break it off with them and you're like, hey, I that's like just not what I'm into. I'm an ally of yours, through and through, but I just, I'm not physically attracted to that. I'm emotionally attracted to men and so on and so forth. You can explain it, and there's this debate of, is that transphobic still, right? Because it was initial. It wasn't like things were going well and all of a sudden it changed everything. It's like, well, that's an initial thing that they volunteered or an initial question, But at the same time, this whole super straight movement has brought this debate to light, while at the same time, people have been asking, well, this whole thing started because some guy on TikTok decided that people are persecuting him for not dating trans people when he cannot cite his sources. He cannot say, here's a screenshot of people discriminating against me because I won't date trans people. Like, and to the researchers' credit of all these organizations, they've tried to find him on camera saying that he won't date trans women before this video, and they haven't been able to find it yet. So it's like, a commenter ain't gonna say, hey, you're transphobic for not dating trans people, if you never said you're not gonna date trans people before. So it's like, it's crazy. The super straight movement is, and that's why I kind of nickname it the super stupid movement, because what? Like, this is a valid debate to have with the trans person to see if it's transphobic. And I think it goes on an individual basis more often than not over the circumstances of that situation. But also, why are we having this debate over someone who was never persecuted for not dating trans people and who just made up a stupid TikTok thing of, you know, I'm super straight, and just as a joke, and even in that video said it's a joke that he's coming out and made a joke of it. Like, why are we having this debate over something so stupid when this guy doesn't even believe in it himself, you know? And he was never persecuted for it. And then all these Nazis are like, hey, that's me. It's like, if your whole thing can be in any way, shape, or form associated with the Nazi party who killed 6 million Jews, who literally tried to rule the world, who tried to eradicate the world of gay and trans people, if your movement can be at all associated with Nazis, probably not the side of history you want to be on. Probably not a hashtag you want to be using, right? Just saying. Now, see, my personal opinion kind of lands between also different than a lot of other people on this topic. Generally speaking, it lands on one of two sides of the argument. Either people think no matter when you break this relationship off, between like your initial hello to maybe, you know, on your first date, they tell you they're trans, all of a sudden, boom, I'm gone, to the point where you're, you know, whenever it happens in a relationship where you're undressing for the first time and all of a sudden you find out that they're trans and haven't had bottom surgery or whatever, all of a sudden it's like it changes the relationship. Like, if you feel at any point in that relationship where it changes, if you feel that difference is transphobic at all, then that's a valid opinion to have. But if you feel that it's not transphobic at all, that's also valid argument. Like, again, it depends on an individual basis here. Like, you can have varying opinions in the community over this topic, and I can pretty much see the argument for both, because it's not like you can still be an ally and just not want to physically have sex with a transgender person. You can still be a complete ally of their community and just not want to date that specific person, right? So I can see the argument on both sides, but I land somewhere in the middle of those two arguments in a way that's like this. I land where basically it's like, if you're saying to yourself, I don't want to date trans people, really, we can have this debate all day of whether it's transphobic or it's not transphobic or whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, you're denying yourself more than you're denying trans people. That's my argument on this. You can blatantly say to a trans person, I don't want to date you because you're a trans man, but at the end of the day, you're denying yourself from so many great people out there that will love the same as anyone else. They will go to the ends of the earth and they will die for your love. You're denying yourself that opportunity for love just because they had a different genitalia when they were born. Like, and they weren't born in the right body, you're going to deny yourself that opportunity for love. You're going to deny yourself an opportunity for so many people out there that can love you the same, just because of one simple reason, that they were born in the wrong body, and their brain told them that they're a man instead of their genitals telling them that. It's more about denying yourself than denying anyone else. And that's the debate we should be having, in my personal opinion. Because regardless if it's transphobic or not, it's denying yourself the opportunity for love of so many great people, that I think it's just, we should be debating that topic instead. So yeah, super straight is stupid, because no one is super straight. We all live on a spectrum of sexual orientation, and we all live on 7 of them at the same time. So it's impossible for anyone to be 100% straight in all 7 categories at the same exact time. It's just not going to happen. Like, you're going to have people that are like, yeah, I'm sexually attracted to a man saying I'm sexually attracted to women, but you're also kind of emotionally attracted to men because you have bros, you have friends who are men as well. And there's 4 different types of love, you know? So really, no one is super straight. It's impossible, you know? So it's a very stupid debate to have, and that's why, you know, I kind of like didn't want to talk about the super straight movement, but also it's like, this whole debate is just null and void to me, because you're denying yourself so many great opportunities to meet and to be with so many great people, that it should be an internal debate on your own of, do I really want to deny myself this opportunity for love? That's my point. So moving on now to the next big topic of the month, we talk about Blue's Clues. So, you know, Blue's Clues is this children's television show in America. I don't know if it went to other countries or not. I know it's in America, at least, on public broadcasting. And it's a great show. It's a cartoon where this little dog named Blue lives in a house, and it's a cartoon house, and he tries to go and find different clues on his adventure that day. And it's a great little TV show for children to learn how to spy things on, sort of like an I Spy thing, of on their TV, of trying to do perception and to learn new things of what things are called, of like, oh, students, can you find the phone on the screen? Because I can't find it, right? And then all of a sudden it points out where the phone is, right? And so it's a great thing to teach kids what things are, and to for parents. I know with my sister and brother-in-law, they'll just, you know, have a moment of making dinner, and they'll go, you know, hey, our 4-year-old son, that's my nephew, just leave him in front of the TV and watch Blue's Clues for 20 minutes while I'm going to make dinner for the night, you know? So it's a great TV show to just like, you know that it's safe for them to watch that, and they're going to learn by watching that show. So it's a great television show. But a while ago, the producers of this show came out and said, you know, Blue, even though the dog Blue is colored blue on the screen, and people assume the gender identity of Blue is a boy, because generally speaking, the way that the world puts gender stereotypes in our head is blue is for boys, pink is for girls. How dare a boy wear pink? How dare a girl wear blue, right? And so sort of Blue's producers came out and said, no, Blue's Clues, Blue is a woman. It's a female dog, you know? And so it sort of just like blew a lot of people's minds of like, what? You know? And it's like, yeah, gender stereotypes are stupid, right? Almost as stupid as the super straight movement. Anyway, but it kind of blew people's minds of like, all of a sudden Blue is a woman, right? And it was like, oh, wow, you know, this is a thing now. And then you sort of look at the situation that Blue's in, where Blue's best friend is a dog named Magenta. Magenta is a, you know, pinkish looking dog, And people think, well, that's a woman because magenta's pink is a girl color. And so the producers are like, yeah, that's a woman. So then this past little month ago, now I don't exactly know when this is airing, but we haven't really decided what date this is going to go out. But at the same time, they put out this alphabet song, right? And it kind of blew people's minds as soon as it came out. And I thought it was some joke that someone was just pranking me with something on video. But then I looked it up and I'm like, wait, no, they actually did this. So Blue's Clues put out an episode on the ABCs. It's a song where it gets to teach kids the ABCs of, it goes through the whole alphabet of A stands for apple, B stands for balloon, all these words so that kids can associate things with the letters, and that way they can learn the alphabet a little bit easier, right? And all of a sudden it gets to this one letter, and the letter, throughout the whole video, each and every letter is colored in with different colors to make it more interesting for kids to watch. All of a sudden it gets to the certain letter, and I believe it's the L or something, where all of a sudden the L is in the colors of the bisexual pride flag. And people are like, okay, that's just a coincidence, whatever, that color combination is possible if you just happen to put those three colors together one day. Probably the producers didn't mean to do that, right? And it's just a happy coincidence, right? Well, they get to the letter P in the song, and the word they associate with P is pride. And all of a sudden they have all these different pride flags on the screen. And it goes from the LGBTQ pride flag to the non-binary pride flag, the transgender pride flag, the lesbian pride flag, which is most important here. And it's so cool that they made the letter P with all of these pride flags. And sort of there you got the idea that, yes, this other letter that had the bisexual pride flag, that was in fact on purpose, because they did this later in the video. And so the community kind of goes crazy because we're all happy that this happened. And here's the point with this. We all know that kids that are maybe 0 years old to 7 or 8 years old when you stop watching Blue's Clues sometimes, we generally know that kids aren't going to immediately at 1 year old know, hey, that's what that pride flag means. They're not going to know that that's the lesbian pride flag. They're not going to know what the transgender pride flag means. It's they're going to see these flags, and now they're going to associate these pride flags with something good that they're learning, right? It's not about teaching them what the rainbow flag means. It's not about teaching them what the transgender pride flag means. It's not about forcing these kids to learn what all this means. It's not cramming our agenda down their throat. What it's doing, in its beautiful way, is showing these kids, these are good pride flags. These are good symbols to see. And if you see these one day, know that they're not bad, because Blue's Clues, a wonderful TV show made of happiness and joy, showed you them all these years ago. And so I think what's going to happen, thanks to things like this happening, is years from now, the homophobes and transphobes of the world are going to come out and they're going to try to teach their kids, oh, the trans flag, don't associate with them. Don't associate with the rainbows. They're going to do homophobic and transphobic crap forever, right? Throughout their lifetime until they pass away from old age, because a lot of them are old. Anyway, so they're going to try to do this, and all of a sudden the kids are going to go, but Blue's Clues taught me that these were good flags. What are you talking about, Grandpa? What are you talking about, Grandma? I don't understand. These are good flags. Blue's Clues wouldn't show me a bad flag in an ABC song. And then they're going to start learning what those flags actually mean later in life. And they're going to immediately start to associate them with good things. So it's an incredible opportunity for our community, and it was a monumental day for us. And then all of a sudden, these groups 1 Million Moms, who's owned by Focus on the Family, hate groups of the world, right? Literal hate groups who spend millions upon millions of dollars just trying to tear other people down and trying to get kids to commit suicide. They literally spend millions of dollars to do this every year, tax-free because they're a nonprofit organization. So 1 million moms is out there trying to do this. Now, by their name, you might think 1 million moms. There are a million moms like this. There are a million parents who all think this hateful way. You're wrong, by the way, because their name is not how many members they have. They named it 1 million moms to make it seem like, hey, lawmakers, we have 1 million people behind our movement. They don't. They have just over 100,000 likes on Facebook. So it's saddening to find out 100,000 people subscribe to their beliefs, but their hateful beliefs. But it's also like, it's false advertising on their part to go, hey, we have 1 million members. No, you only have 100,000. That's like 1/10 the size that you claim you are. So it's not as many people as you think it is by the name 1 million moms, right? So they come out and they're like, oh, cancel Blue's Clues because they're doing all of this, just like they did for other TV shows in the past, like Arthur, when another cartoon in America on PBS, which is a public broadcasting service here in America, free of charge. It's on everyone's TV. Pretty safe viewing and programming for children to watch every day, right? Arthur did this episode where his one teacher had his gay wedding, and they show the gay wedding on TV and how happy the couple is, you know, and Arthur goes to the wedding as a classmate of a student of this teacher, and it was just beautiful. And so 1 million moms is like, cancel Arthur. Like, they don't like anything good in the world, you know? Like, imagine going through life and just hating everything around you. Like, walking around and going, wow, the sunshine is out today. It's such a beautiful day. How dare you? Like, imagine that lifestyle, right? Anyway, I digress. So 1 million moms is trying to cancel Blue's Clues. Blue's Clues producers are like, to hell with you. We don't care. We did this for a reason. We did this for the LGBTQ because we're allies too. To hell with you, 1 million moms, right? But then the LGBTQ community starts picking up on the fact that Blue is a woman dog. She lives with Magenta. Magenta is her best friend. Magenta's a woman. They lived together for years and years and years and years and years, and they're so happy. They're best friends. They're always hanging out with each other. They're always going on all these adventures. Is Blue a lesbian? Are all of these episodes that we're watching of Blue and Magenta going on these adventures, are they dates? Are they romantic dates for this couple that we're watching? Is that what we're, you know? And it's just mind-boggling to like think about, like, wow, they wrote this in the script for years and no one picked up on it, you know? Like, and it was so beautifully ingrained into the script where they didn't have to say Blue was a lesbian, right? But people are now associating it and going, but okay. Here's the thing. Back in the day, gay couples would live together for years and years and years. They would always tell their family, their friends, they would always go to the grocery stores and be like, hey, this is just my roommate, this is my friend. They would always just say, that's his roommate, that's her roommate. For years and years and years, they're just good friends, right? And then behind their apartment doors, they're like, no, now we can actually hold hands, because back in the day, it used to be illegal to be gay. It used to be, you can be locked up in prison or in an insane asylum just for being gay or trans. And so you really couldn't express your love outdoors in public. Now you can, luckily, but we still have hate crimes against that. But it's growing more accepted. And all of a sudden it's like, well, Blue lived with Magenta and they're best friends. It's so close of a storyline that it's like, it might as well just be a carbon copy of what gay people have gone through for so many years now, of having to say that they were just roommates and best friends with someone just to escape the long arms of the stupid law, you know? And so now people are like, well, maybe Blue's a lesbian. Okay, well, in the little Pride Flags episode that they had of the alphabet, Blue was standing next to a lesbian pride flag. Well, that's interesting. And there's also this other letter in the song that has the bisexual pride flag. So maybe Blue's Clues is a bisexual, but just happens to have a lesbian partner. Magenta. Like, oh my God, this would be just incredible, right? And so sort of the community has taken that away from the whole storyline, and we're just like, you know what? Screw 1 Million Moms. We're not even going to pay attention to them anymore. Let's concentrate on the fact that Blue's Clues told us a lesbian storyline for years and years and years and taught us all how normal a lesbian couple can be looked at. And let's just appreciate it for what it is, you know? Let's not dive into the hate just for a day. Just give us a day of looking at the good of the story and being like, you know what? Screw the hate groups. Just give us a day without the hate, you know? And sort of like the same time that's happening, there's other stories happening right after that. And I don't know if you've heard of these stories or not, but in America, we also have a lot of books of like Dr. Seuss books. And here's where we're going to dive into two stories that happen simultaneously, but for all the wrong reasons. So we're going to talk about Dr. Seuss and Hasbro, right? First, we're going to talk about Dr. Seuss, right? So, and you'll see the association between the two in just a second. But Dr. Seuss is an author, or a book series out there for children, and it's, to be fair, a great book series. I read a lot of Dr. Seuss books as a kid, and it teaches you a lot by reading these books. Now that I have my own children's book, I would much rather children read my children's book, which tells you the gay storyline of Alex and Troy and how they adopt this dog named Shadow and give him a great, wonderful Christmas for the first time. I think that's a lot better of a story than Dr. Seuss is. But Dr. Seuss is a very popular series, right? And so don't quote me on this. I think years ago, the actual author for this passed away, and now all of the books are in a trust with a company, a publishing company, that gets to decide what happens with these books, of how many we print, how many are sold. They get to decide where they go with the books, and so on and so forth, right? So this publishing company owns the right to all of Dr. Seuss books. About 6 years ago, the company starts debating 6 particular books, because these 6 individual books are not performing as well as other Dr. Seuss books. They're not selling enough copies to make it worthwhile printing millions of these at a time. Now, you gotta understand, as an author myself of a couple books now, I understand what it's like for a publishing company to come back at me and say, we're no longer going to print this particular book because it's not performing. I understand what it's like for a printing company to come back and say, you know what, in order for us to print this book, you have to change a couple words here and here because we don't want to be associated with that. Not dealing with LGBTQ with the Shadow's First Christmas book, it was put out with no objections. I'm talking about other like trade books in the sound and lighting divisions that I used to write books on. I've had publishers come back to me and say, hey, can we change this paragraph here? And most of the time, it's just a matter of grammatical errors that I've had, that they're like, hey, we don't want to put out this book because even you don't want it to have errors in it grammatically. You want to sound smart with this paragraph, you know, and you just made a mistake. You need to add a comma here, or you need to separate these sentences. It's a run-on sentence, so on and so forth. Sometimes a publisher does all that work for us and helps us write or helps us with making sure the book flows well with how the paragraphs are structured. And sometimes I just had grammatical errors in my books. So I've learned what it's like for a publishing company to go, we don't want to print this until you fix this, this, and this, right? I understand. They're a private company. I own a private company, and we can make decisions between us. If I send them a book and they don't want to print it, it's up to them. I have the option of going to other companies to print that book, but ultimately it's on that company to decide if they want to get behind that book and if they want to print it. Now, granted, when I'm talking about printing a book, it's they print like one or two at a time. And generally speaking, once a book gets beyond about a year in publish, they'll just print on order. When you order a book online, they start printing that book and it's shipped out to you, right? But they're not putting a huge investment into my book line because it's not a New York Times bestseller, compared to these big publishing companies that own Dr. Seuss books, where they're actually talking about printing millions of them at a time, right? And so with that, this is a multi-million-dollar decision on theirs to print each of these 6 books. And if they say, as a private company, they don't want to print this book anymore because it's not selling enough copies to make it worth their while to print these books anymore, that's their financial decision, right? And so for 6 years in their board meetings, behind closed doors, they've been debating these 6 books of Dr. Seuss's series. And they're like, hey, they aren't selling, they aren't performing, we aren't going to make our money back on this investment of printing another run of these. Ultimately, this year they decided we're no longer going to sell and print these 6 books in particular. Now, granted, those 6 books do have racial undertones in them. There's a section where it goes, and it talks about, it has pictures of monkeys on the page, and the book literally refers to the monkeys as African Americans, which is a horrible racial slur that was used back in the day and is still used now. It's really, really bad. Like, this is just as bad as the N-word, So it's horrible that that Dr. Seuss had this in their series, And these 6 books had racial undertones. And maybe that's why they weren't selling so many copies. Maybe that's why, because people realized, wow, this is racist. I don't want my children to read this, so I'm not going to buy this book. Maybe that's why they're not performing for the company. And so for 6 years, they've been debating these books back and forth in the board meetings, and they ultimately made the purely financial and monetary decision to stop printing these 6 books. When they announced that they would not be printing these 6 books, all of a sudden, for 6 years, this financial decision became, we stopped printing these 6 books because of racial undertones. No, they just weren't selling. They just weren't selling. Maybe because they were racist, but don't blame why you're not printing these 6 books on racist attitudes, because it makes it seem like Black Lives Matter. It makes it seem like NAACP asked you to stop printing these books and you're just giving in to the cancel culture, right? Well, first off, we should cancel racism out of America. We should cancel racism out of the world, no doubt. But you're making it seem like it's all these other people's fault instead of your own financial decision, right? As a private company, which you are allowed to do as a private company. I own a private company. I understand. I'm able to make decisions for my company in what suits my financial interest the best, right? And no one can complain about that. But if I was to make a financial decision and then go outside and make a statement on, well, I did it because these other people asked me to. No, I made a financial decision. Like, it's not these other people's fault what I'm doing. And it's like basically taking a financial decision that certain people are going to get upset about, and you're blaming it on another group just so you don't get the backlash, just so you don't get the blame as a company. And that's what Dr. Seuss Publisher did here. At the same time of all this happening, there's this company named Hasbro who has this toy, and one of the toys that they own, the full rights to, is a toy called Mr. Potato Head. Mr. Potato Head, by the way, is this toy where it's a plastic potato that it has a bunch of holes in it all over, and you can put different body parts and different hats and different shoes all on this potato, and it's a really fun game for kids. Basically, you can put an eyeball where the butt is supposed to be, and you can have a 4-year-old laughing for weeks over it. Like, it is purely a fun thing for kids to have fun with. But with it, this toy is also a great learning experience for kids, because underneath all of it, it can teach kids that gender is not so binary. Gender is not so between male and female, sometimes gender lives outside of that. And that, you know what? Sometimes you can have a mustache and also, wear pink and so on and so forth, and all these different variations that you can have with this toy to understand, you know what? Gender doesn't live in the genitals. Gender lives in the brain. And it's how you feel that your gender is. That's way more important. And so, in essence, this toy, Mr. Potato Head, can teach kids that trans people are valid, that non-binary people are valid, that gender fluid people are valid, because it has interchangeable parts. While it's a very silly toy, granted, it can teach people, and kids especially, that gender is not so two-faced of male and female as the school system teaches us, right? And so, Hasbro, who owns the toy, sees what's happening in America. So in America, we had a vote on the Equality Act the other day. Back in February, the Equality Act came up for a vote in the House of Representatives, which is our federal branch of government in the Congress and legislative branch. And so the Equality Act is this most sweeping legislation that would help LGBTQ people and protect our community from discrimination. It's the most sweeping piece of legislation that would ever be passed in the Congress in its entire history. So far in our history, by the way, back in 2003, we had a case of Lawrence v. Texas, where that case went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, and 9 justices on the Supreme Court decided that you can no longer imprison people just because they're LGBTQ. It's no longer illegal to be LGBTQ, which is like, that just happened in 2003. That's less than 20 years ago, by the way. Less than 20 years ago, this is happening. And it was 9 people on the Supreme Court that decided this for the country. A country of, 300 and some odd million people? Like, it's awful. No, more than that. But, so they're deciding this for all Americans, that it's no longer illegal to be gay or transgender or so on and so forth. They're deciding this. 2015, they decide in a case of Overbell v. Hodges, right, that marriage equality became the law of the land. June 26, 2015, they come up with a sweeping decision in the Supreme Court that you can marry whoever the frick you want to as an adult. As long as you're both consenting adults, you can get married in this country as a gay couple, as a transgender couple, so on and so forth. Marriage equality became the law of the land, and your marriage is valid across all 50 states and all different territories of U.S., right? So again, 9 people decided this entire thing for the whole country. Then in 2020, in June of 2020, the Supreme Court again made a decision that you're no longer able to fire someone for being gay or transgender. In 2 cases that happened at the same exact day in the Supreme Court of the United States, they decide you cannot fire someone for being gay or transgender. And so all of these steps forward have all been thanks to 9 people on the Supreme Court of the United States. 9 people who, yes, we pay their salaries, but they're appointed. They're not voted on by every single American. We don't vote for them. I have no say who those 9 people are, but yet they're making all the decisions that affect my life personally. They're making the decision that I'm able to not be in prison for being gay. They're making the decision that I'm able to marry my husband someday. They're making the decision that no employer can fire me because I'm gay or trans if I was trans. But they're making that decision for me, and I haven't even voted for them. I'm paying their salary as a American taxpayer, but I'm not voting for them. The Congress, on the other hand, who hundreds of people that we're employing over there, that we're voting on, by the way, all Americans are voting on the Congress of, like, the United States House of Representatives and the Senate. We're voting those people in office, and yet they have never once voted in favor, and they have never once passed any legislation to protect the LGBTQ community. Even though, by the way, 83% of Americans, non-LGBTQ Americans, 83% of non-LGBTQ Americans support the Equality Act. They support conversion therapy bans. They support LGBTQ education being mandatory in all schools in America, both public and private. They support sweeping legislation to protect the LGBTQ community. 83% of non-LGBTQ Americans. 67%, I believe, there'll be a number on the screen if it isn't 67%, but I believe 67% of Republicans want the same exact things. They want the Equality Act. They want conversion therapy bans. They want protections for the LGBTQ community. They want it. An overwhelming majority of America wants these type of pieces of legislation. And so what happens, right? The Congress has had the Equality Act go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, never getting a vote on the floor in the Senate for years and years and years. This piece of legislation has been going back and forth for like 20, 30, 40 years. It's ridiculous how long this has been going on now. And yet, we're voting for the people. Like, look, I say it this way all the time, where I'm voting for someone because they say they will vote in favor of what their constituents want, right? If a majority of your constituents want you to vote for the Equality Act, you better vote for the Equality Act, right? It doesn't matter what piece of legislation we're talking about, by the way, whether it's budget, whether it's, we're talking about completely different things. If your constituents and your voters want you to vote for something, want you to pass something, or say no to something, you better vote that way, because they're your voters. They're the people that are paying you. They're the people that elect you to office to represent them, right? And so even in the cases where we say there's certain pockets of America that do not want the Equality Act, well, their voters have the full rights to say, you better vote no to this, right? They have every right to do that because that's how they want to be represented in Congress. And so this passes, this goes to the floor of the House of Representatives in February. This passes the House of Representatives, and the same day this is happening, by the way, something else is happening in the Senate, which we'll talk about in a second, but at the same time this is happening, Hasbro knows this is going on. They know this is a monumental day for transgender people. They know it's a monumental day for the LGBTQ community in general, because a majority of this bill would require every government building in America to be trans friendly and say, you know what, you're a trans woman, you're allowed to use the women's restroom because you're a valid woman, right? You're allowed to be in a women's sporting program because you're a woman, you know? Like, it's basically just offering validity to the trans community. That's it. And you can no longer, at the federal level, you can no longer discriminate against LGBTQ people. Like, we won't be allowed to, no one can deny us fair housing, et cetera, because I'm gay or someone is trans or non-binary. You can no longer discriminate against LGBTQ people at the federal level. Private companies are different than this, by the way. Private companies can make their own private decisions, but the government itself cannot discriminate against you being LGBTQ if this passes, right? And thus, there's a whole lot of backlash from the right media, and they're like, oh my God, you're going to have a man going into a woman's restroom. You're going to have this 80-year-old creepo man walking into a little girl's restroom and molesting the child, and like, that's still illegal. No one's advocating for that. No one's asking for that. No one. You know, it's kind of weird that you're wanting to say that, right? And so Hasbro's like, hey, this is a big day for the LGBTQ community. Let's support them. In theory, right? All of a sudden, they take their Mr. Potato Head toy, which is also a toy that's not performing as well and not, selling as many as it used to. And they're like, let's do a marketing stunt. So they decide, well, let's turn Mr. Potato Head gender neutral. And let's put out a statement. We're going to call him, from now on, Mr. Potato Head is now called Potato Head. They're gender neutral, right? It's a gender neutral toy from now on, right? And so, wow, Hasbro, thank you for your support of the LGBTQ community by trying to make this move. Now, granted, the toy was always very trans-friendly. It was always non-binary friendly. It was always a very LGBTQ-friendly toy in general. You're just doing an extra step now and taking the Mr. away, Fine, whatever, Good on you for your attempt to help our community. So far. You knew this was a big day for the LGBTQ community. You knew you would get a lot of press over this. You knew that right-wing media was going to be coming after our community that day. You knew, Hasbro, that the media is going to be searching for a story like this to make fun of our community. And thus begins a saga of Fox News and so on going, how dare the transgender community ask Hasbro to change their toy to gender neutral just to fit their narrative? Fox News, where was that source? Name one time the trans community, the non-binary community, name one time anyone in the LGBTQ community asked Hasbro to make this change. No. Hasbro made this change because they just wanted to, and because they knew it was a big day for our community, and they wanted a publicity stunt. They knew this was going to happen. They knew it all along. They wanted to pander to our community just to get money out of our community. That's the difference. That's the difference between support and pure pandering. And we're going to be talking about that in a future episode, by the way, which someone actually asked us in the comments to cover, how to spot the difference between pandering and actual support from a company. But with this move of Hasbro's, they did it where, hey, we're going to change our entire toy around to be gender neutral. All of a sudden, they start realizing, even though they knew it long ahead of time, this was going to happen because this is all a publicity stunt, right? So they realize, hey, transphobic people buy our toys too, and we need to wisen up and change what we did. We need to reverse it. So they come out with a statement, and they never mentioned exactly what happened of why they had a change of heart on this, which makes you think that statement was written long in advance of this, knowing this was going to happen. But they're like, hey, transphobic people want to buy our toys too, and we don't want to have them stop buying our toys. So, you know what? It's Mr. Potato Head again. We're sorry. We're sorry that we tried to pander to the LGBTQ community. And so now, in a move that was entirely trying to be trans-friendly, somehow they made that move a transphobic move. And it's genuinely hard to make a trans-friendly move look transphobic. It's generally pretty hard for, like in the Dr. Seuss story, it's hard for you to go, hey, I'm against racism, and make that move look inherently racist, right? Because you're blaming that move, that financial decision, on the African-American community. You're allowing someone else to take the blame for your failed publicity stunt, right? Or your purely financial decision. You're allowing a minority to take the blame for your monetary decision. That's pandering. That's wrong. It's inherently wrong. Why the hell are these big companies allowed to do this? And so now you have a lot of people out there thinking, oh, the LGBTQ community had to go and cancel the Mr. Potato Head, didn't they? They had to go and cancel it. No, we never asked for that. Name one time we asked for that. Hasbro just failed a marketing stunt. And they did it on a day where they knew the trans community was having a big day, so they tried to cash in on it. That's what happened, And it pisses me off that this is what is happening in America. These big companies are allowed to make these moves, and yet they'll still sell toys. They'll still, all of this marketing for them that rather than paying for a commercial on TV nationally that day, They got all these news outlets to talk about it, both left and right wing, conservative and liberal. They got to have all these media outlets in the middle talk about it. They got to have our show talk about Hasbro and Dr. Seuss books. They got us to talk about them. And that's all they want. Because at the end of the day, any press is good press. And they know people are going to be pissed off at them all they want. People are going to be upset. But at the end of the day, now I'm thinking about Hasbro. Now I'm thinking about Mr. Potato Head. So if I had a child, well, I need a new toy for that child today, you know? Like, people are going to buy their toy because of this marketing stunt. Because even though it is a failed marketing stunt, it still worked. It's still, even though on paper it failed, in essence, financially, it still succeeded, which is just crazy. And so this just incentivizes these big companies who do not care about people. They do not care about the people that buy their products at all. They don't care about any minority at all. They're willing to use whoever and whatever to get ahead to financially benefit their investors. And that is the problem. This just inherently makes all of that marketing stunt a valid marketing stunt. And it worked. It sadly worked. So that's what was happening in the House, and the Equality Act went to the Senate now, and now it has a date on the floor of the Senate where it's going to be voted on, hopefully, and hopefully passed there, even though there's something called the filibuster in America, where you need 60-some votes in the Senate to win, not just a majority 51 out of 100. You need 60-some out of 100 for some unknown freaking reason. But because of the filibuster, there has to be a certain number of Republicans who vote for this bill. And again, I say, if a majority of your voters want you to vote for something or vote against something, you should have to vote in favor or against it. It doesn't matter what your voters want you to vote for. You should have to vote for it because you're their representative. You're there on behalf of them. Your vote is their vote. And come next election cycle, we're going to have senators, we're going to have representatives who did not vote in favor of what their constituents, of what their voters wanted them to vote on. We're going to have people that voted against what their voters wanted them to do, and thus, and probably for financial reasons, because these hate groups just a couple weeks ago started this whole campaign, spending millions of dollars, sending out emails and phone calls to all their senators across all 50 states and saying, you need to vote against this horrible bill because of XYZ made-up story that never ever happened, of this 80-year-old man walked into a girl's restroom and molested them. It never happened, and it's especially not to blame on the LGBTQ community. So, like, no one's advocating for that, and so they're following financial reasons instead of their voters, which is entirely wrong. Meanwhile, in every state in America, there's been bills proposed in every state legislature that would limit the rights of transgender people in every state in America. Now, there are certain states that are worse than others, and there are certain states that it's never going to pass in, like California or New York, where they actually read the bills before they vote on them. But these hate groups of the world put out these, wrote these pieces of legislation, sent them to their senators and representatives in each state, and they said, hey, put this on the floor for a vote. And it's like, these people don't even read what these hate groups sent them before they're like, hey, I support this, and this is my bill. This is what I wrote. No, it's what this hate group wrote, you know? It's weird that your bill looks word for word, verbatim, how every other state's bill looks that's all being proposed, right? Weird. In certain states, they went so far as to say, well, actually in Mississippi, a bill was just passed by the legislative branch and signed by the governor, which means it's now a law in Mississippi that women are no longer allowed to compete in women's sports. Men are no longer allowed to compete in men's sports. What? So in other words, you're saying you don't want any athletic programs at all in the state, which means I better not see a freaking basketball game. I better not see a football game. I better not see one sporting event in the entire state of Mississippi, because you don't want men in men's sports. You don't want women in women's sports. You don't want sports. Well, they're like, no, what we mean is we don't want trans men in men's sports. We don't want trans women in women's sports. Well, trans men are just men, so you don't want men in men's sports. So you don't want real trans women are real women, so you don't want them in women's sports. What the hell, Mississippi, right? This just went through like a couple days ago, like from what we're recording right now. And in another state in America, they have a bill proposed, literally, and to this date of recording, it hasn't passed yet. But they have this bill proposed that would require a school child, doesn't matter what age, to show their genitalia to a teacher or a professional in the school to prove that they have the appropriate genitalia to enter that restroom. This bill is not transphobic. It is, because I know our audience might make that assumption. I know there's an argument for that. What it is, it's literally a bill asking to allow pedophilia. It's asking for school professionals, teachers and nurses and principals. It's requiring a school to look at your genitalia of a 5-year-old before you walk into a restroom to prove you're actually that gender. It's a bill promoting pedophilia. What the hell? Like, what is America if that is the bill that you're proposing? Who in history is going to look kindly on that, you know? Like, you do know that in history it's going to record you as just a pedophile, right? Like, what the hell? And so we have all these bills going through right now because of the Equality Act. And here's sort of the main point of, there's a reason why conservative media outlets are going crazy over Dr. Seuss right now. Because they don't have anything better to talk about. Talking about Dr. Seuss is a distraction from the Equality Act, because on other media outlets, they're talking about the Equality Act. They're interviewing people of, what would this actually do to protect the LGBTQ community? How much is this bill needed? They're interviewing people like me. I literally was on news stations talking about the Equality Act the other day when all this went down. And we had different reporters who I work with all the time asking me like, hey, Matt, you're very involved with the LGBTQ community and LGBTQ rights. Tell me what the Equality Act actually means, because they are new to it or whatever. They're involved in other movements. They're like, what does this bill actually mean? What would it do for the community? Why do you need this bill passed, right? And so local news is asking questions to activists. Why do you think this is needed? Tell me some fact statistics. Show me the data of why this is needed. And so we are. Like, groups like Powered by Rainbows and PA Equality Project, all the groups I work for, are showing them the hard data of this is why we need it. Hospitals are denying LGBTQ people from service in emergency rooms because we're LGBTQ. This is why we need this bill, right? We're showing them all of this. We're showing them the hard data. Whereas on conservative media outlets, and I'm not saying I'm a conservative here because I'm purely independent, right? But Fox News went on and they're talking about Dr. Seuss and how the cancel culture. It's like, if you don't want to interview people to ask them why they wanted the bill, why are you on the air? Like, if you want to talk about LGBTQ rights, ask the people that actually know about these topics. Don't try to distract us with some stupid story that Hasbro wants you to talk about so they get more marketing for free, right? And that's what happens. It was a big distraction. And all of these little bills all across the United States, in every state, that hate groups wrote for these legislators and said, here, put this on the floor for a vote. All these hate groups spent millions of dollars doing this, right? Great. They're wasting their money. But you know what's the best part of it all? And what gives me hope out of all of this is these hate groups, for years and years and years, they didn't care about the Equality Act at all. They knew it was a bill, but they knew it wouldn't pass. So they didn't care at all. They didn't talk about it. They didn't put ads out against it. They didn't spend millions of dollars sending all these legislators across the whole country different bills. They didn't do any of this. They just let it go because they knew it would die on the floor. They knew there wasn't enough votes for it to pass. They knew that a majority of America still didn't approve of this. Well, now these hate groups are scared. They know that there's a potential for the Equality Act at the federal level to pass. That's why they're willing to spend all their time, all their resources, all their money trying to fight against it. If they knew it wouldn't pass, they wouldn't be doing all of this work. They wouldn't be working this hard against it. Because we've seen that for the past 50 years with the same exact bill. They just didn't care because they knew it wouldn't pass. All of a sudden now, they're doing everything in their power to make sure it fails. They're doing everything in their power to undermine its authority because they know that it has the potential to actually pass this time. And if it passes in the federal government, nothing they do at the state level matters. Nothing they do in Mississippi with this bill matters. It's null and void because the federal law overrides it. They know that it has potential to pass. That's why they're spending millions of dollars trying to reach senators and saying all these scary stories that are completely fake and made up. They're trying to scare these senators. But in the meantime, they're scared shitless themselves. They know that. They know that it has the potential to pass. They know it. And that's what gives me hope, is because anytime hate groups have to work their butts off to do anything and spend millions of dollars on something, it means something wonderful is happening on the other side. Anytime a hate group is out there going, oh my God, we have to frantically scramble to make this happen, it means something good's happening. And they're just like trying to figure out how to counteract it, you know? Because they know, like Focus on the Family, these hate groups, they know that if the Equality Act passes, the very next thing our community is going to be searching for is conversion therapy ban. The very next thing. And you know what the conversion therapy ban bans them from? Their entire business structure. Because Focus on the Family makes their money almost entirely on conversion therapy. And so if all of a sudden conversion therapy is banned, they don't make any money anymore. All of their employees are fired overnight. All of their camps are just abandoned overnight. They know the very next step for our community is to get rid of every single one of them. And that's why they're so scared. And it's just beautiful to know that people at Focus on the Family are sitting in their offices every day going, oh my God, my job's on the line. My hateful job is on the line. Their jobs at Focus on the Family of pushing kids to suicide is about to be gone. And it is beautiful to watch from the sidelines. It is beautiful to watch as an educator, as an activist. This is beautiful. So go ahead, Focus on the Family. Spend all your freaking money. Spend all your tax-free money that was given to you by multi-million-dollar donors. Go ahead and spend it all. Because you know what? At the end of the day, I just know you're scared. And that's okay. Because you know what? For the past 50 years or so, our community was scared shitless from you. And that's what gives me hope. And speaking of conversion therapy, our next story on the docket today is about conversion therapy too. Because the American Psychologists Association, otherwise known as the APA, they came out officially this month and said that they are against conversion therapy in all forms, which is just beautiful. Because if you think about it, years ago, if you don't know, APA came out and they diagnosed homosexuality and transgenderism as a mental disorder years and years and years ago. And our community fought hard against this. And all of a sudden, years later, because of that fight against them, because of uprisings like Stonewall riots and so on, Compton cafeteria riots and so on, because of all that pushback, they ultimately made the decision to not be homophobic and not be transphobic because they actually started researching this properly. Because during those years when they called it a mental disease, right, they started doing all these studies trying to find a cure for homosexuality, trying to find a cure for transgenderism, of which it's not a disease, it's not something bad, so it doesn't require a cure, right? You cannot change what's in my DNA throughout my entire body from the moment I'm conceived to the moment I die being gay. You cannot change that. And APA didn't know this back in the day, and they thought, hey, it's a disease we have to cure, you know? No, it's not. So for a while there, it was classified as a disease to be homosexual or transgender, but then all of a sudden they changed their minds. And they came around with the science of the day and age, and they said it's no longer a disease to be gay or trans. Great. Unfortunately, now an entire generation of people that are now older generations, but back in the day, it used to be my age people, they learned, well, if APA is calling it a mental disorder, if the government is imprisoning gay people and putting transgender people in mental asylums, right? If all of that is happening, then it's adding validity to this entire argument that being gay or trans is wrong. It's adding validity to that, and that's what's wrong. That's why we're pushing APA back in the day to change their minds and to not classify these as diseases. That's why back in the day we're pushing for legislation to be passed where it's no longer illegal to be gay. That's why we pushed for things like Lawrence v. Texas, like I talked about earlier in the show, for all of these things that's happened to our community. That's why we're pushing for the Equality Act, because without these pieces of legislation, it's adding validity to the homophobic and transphobic arguments out there. It's adding validity to it, and that's all they need to know, hey, what I think is right. No, it's not right. Just the government won't get off their butts and talk about it, you know? So APA, now, years later, now that it's no longer classified as a disease, all these studies are being done properly on transgender people and figuring out, yes, gender lives in your brain, not your genitals. Yes, gender is valid. All these studies are being done. Yes, there is a gay gene in your DNA. Yes, it is valid to be homosexual. It is valid to be bisexual. It is valid for all of your LGBTQ plus, like all of your sexual orientations that are possible, the millions that there are. It's valid. And so all of a sudden, they realize that conversion therapy is pushing kids to suicide. And they start reading up on all the data, and officially this past month, they came out against conversion therapy, which years ago, APA was the main reason why kids were sent to conversion therapy. And now they're coming out in a statement against it, which is just monumental for our community. It's such a wonderful thing to see, because now we have one more organization on our side fighting for this. Now we have psychologists who are behind us 100% saying, to hell with conversion therapy. It needs to be banned in all forms in America and beyond. So that's wonderful. Also this month, Michigan had something else happen about adoption. So on the show, we've talked about LGBTQ adoption before. If you don't recall, years ago, we talked about a religious agency, a religious adoption agency denying a gay couple their right to adopt a child because they are gay and because they thought they had this religious exemption from, and they thought that they can discriminate against gay people because they're religious people, right? And so we talked about on the show, we talked about in another episode we did on LGBTQ adoption and showing you the process of how LGBTQ adoption works, which, by the way, that episode ended up helping a bunch of people actually adopt their first child. So congratulations to all those new parents out there from that episode that were helped through that entire platform. That's just wonderful to see in the comments a lot of times. But in that episode, we walked people through the entire process of adoption and showed them each step in the process. And unfortunately, in a lot of states, you're required to go to your local adoption agency, the closest one to where you live, and get them to help you. If they happen to be a religious agency that doesn't want to help you as a gay couple or whatever, you're then required to go on the online version of your adoption agency at your state-run website, and you no longer get the in-person help that you are that is required to adopt a child, right? You no longer get the same level of help on an in-person basis. All of a sudden, it's just through websites and phone calls. It's a lot harder then. And so we proved in that episode how these adoption agencies are given hundreds of thousands of dollars to help couples adopt a child. This is a big financial gain for them to open an adoption agency. And so these religious organizations who are denying gay people from adoption, they're first off losing out on hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars right there. And I know what you might be saying. Well, they're religious agencies. They don't care about the money. They only care about helping people. Really? Really? A religious agency isn't worried about the money? Really? I will believe that when I'm dead, long gone. Anyway, so moving on from this, that kind of argument, which is totally not true. These religious agencies are saying, we're denying people because we believe it's a sin to be gay and this couple shouldn't have a child. Well, okay. Did you ever read the Bible to know if homosexuality is actually mentioned in the Bible? Because it's not, by the way. It's not. Fun fact, it's not. And it's fun to fight a homophobe on that because it's okay, then look it up. You're not going to find it. It's not in the original Bible. Homosexuality is never mentioned in the original Bible. So it's all right, fun times of facts with Matt, And so it's all right, if you're going to be stupid and not even read the Bible that you're preaching out of, and you're going to deny people the right to a happy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which we were all promised in the Declaration of Independence in 1776 in our country when our country was founded, right? If you're going to deny that, which you have no right to do, then at the very least, if you want government agencies to fund you, which, by the way, adoption is this process where the agency does get tens and tens of thousands of dollars to help a couple through adoption, and they do multiples of these at the same time. So they're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in from all different forms. And so it's either the couple who pays these bills or it's the government who subsidizes it. Like in Pennsylvania, where I live, Pennsylvania subsidizes almost all of that cost for the gay couple or the couple trying to adopt a child, because they have so many people in the adoption network that they want to provide a loving family, right? And they have so many homeless kids that are left abandoned, are neglected, are abused by their original parents. And so they have so many kids in that network that are looking for a home, a loving home, that they want to help that. And so in Pennsylvania, it's one of the many states in America where they subsidize a large amount of the cost of this, and they pay the adoption agency on the couple's behalf to help them find a child, right? And that's great. But if you're going to take government money, if you're going to take a penny of our government's money, of taxpayer funds, and you're going to deny a gay couple the right to a child, that's not right. At the very least, in that LGBTQ adoption episode, I made the argument, at the very least, you should be required to say, you know what, we're a religious organization, we don't want to serve a gay couple, but because the law demands that the gay couple come to their closest adoption agency to where they live, because the law requires that, what we should have to do by law, if we want government money for all these other couples, what they should be required to do is say, you know what, we don't want to serve you as a gay couple, but we're required by law to hand you this business card. This is the very next adoption agency that's closest to you that is LGBTQ friendly. They're going to be able to help you, but we don't want to help you here. So at the very least, if you want government funding, you should have to say, hey, here's the next one down the road. They can help you out. They're LGBTQ friendly. We just don't want to help you here because we're a religious organization, right? That would be fine in my eyes, because then the gay couple still gets the help that's required. They still get in-person help rather than just through a website and phone calls with the state. They still get in-person help, but it's just a mile down the road. It's just another couple miles into the next city or whatever, right? And so that would be fine in my eyes. The government hasn't said that yet, hasn't required that of agencies yet. Some have voluntarily done that, but for the most part, they're just arseholes who haven't done that, right? So Michigan just happens to be the headquarters of the nation's largest religious adoption network. They have offices in 30-some states. They have tons and tons of adoption agencies that they oversee, and their headquarters is in Michigan. And we've talked about Michigan before, and their laws, even in both of those episodes that I mentioned a moment ago. But now, that religious organization has come out and said, you know what? We're going to serve gay people. We're going to help gay people find a child and adopt children. We're going to help gay people. We're going to help LGBTQ people and LGBTQ couples. It's amazing, right? On the surface, it's amazing. Now, what you got to realize is that's the headquarters saying that. At a local level, you could still have that adoption agency worker who goes, who stupidly says that it's a sin to be gay or whatever, even though it's not. You can still have that individual worker who goes, you know what? My employer, my headquarters tells me I have to serve gay people now, but that doesn't mean I have to make it easy for them. So they can try everything in their power to make it hard for the gay couple to actually adopt a child. And overall, like we said in that adoption episode, there's 8 steps, and it's a long process. It takes months and over a year to adopt a child. And to officially have that certificate that you adopted a child, it takes over a year to do that, and a lot of money and a lot of time investment. So you can still have that individual worker or that individual office of that adoption agency going, hey, we're going to make that as hard as possible. We're going to make up some sort of stupid reason why this gay couple can't adopt. It's not because of religious reasons now, but now it's, oh, they didn't have enough chairs at their kitchen table one day when I went to visit, because keep in mind, to adopt a child, an adoption worker has to go and visit the home on a regular basis to make sure that child is happy in that home. They can make up wild stories in the courtroom where the judge has to approve of it. And they can say, you know what? That child told me they weren't happy. Child's like, no, I'm perfectly happy with Joe and Steve. I'm perfectly happy with Daddy and Daddy, right? An adoption agency worker in the courtroom, because the child's not there in person to tell the judge himself or herself or themselves, because that doesn't happen all the time, the adoption agency worker can go, you know what? Well, little Billy told me that he isn't really happy in this home, and make up some sort of sob story to the judge. And all of a sudden, this gay couple is denied a child just because that's a homophobic or transphobic adoption agency worker. So on paper, it sounds great that this nation's largest religious adoption agency is going to help gay people all of a sudden, but it's like, yeah, but that doesn't solve our problem everywhere. People can still discriminate on an individual basis and make it hard as hell for that couple to do it. But not just that, it also is this very telling thing. All of a sudden, the Equality Act is about to pass, hopefully, and they sort of know the writing's on the wall for them. This whole debate over religious exemption to discriminate is kind of at its end, where soon it's not going to be legally allowed anymore. And so they know soon enough, some government agency is going to require them to hand these couples a business card and say, go to the next one down the road, they're going to be able to help you. They know that laws are being written for them to be required to do this. And so right now they're preemptively saying, hey, before that legislation passes, before we're mandated to do it anyway, and before we're mandated to send these couples to the next adoption agency so that they can make $100,000 per couple, before that happens, they're saying they're going to accept gay couples all of a sudden. And so is it that you want to help gay couples? No, it's that you want to make the $100,000 yourself. You're realizing you're going to have to give this business away eventually, so you might as well just suck it up and make the $100,000 yourself. It's all about the money for them. Not about helping couples, not about whether it's a sin or not to be gay. It was never about that. This just proves it's all about the $100,000 per couple. It's all about the money. And sadly, that's where that story kind of ends for right now. Hopefully legislation comes around in the coming years to help with that, but it's quite terrible, that it's happening. So anyway, with all that said, that was the news stories of the month, and that was what's happening around here this month of March 2021. I hope you enjoyed this entire episode, and thank you so much for watching. If you want to support our show in any way, shape, or form, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and you turn on notifications to see all of our episodes. We greatly appreciate all of our viewers. We greatly appreciate all of our students out there learning from the show. Like I said earlier in the episode, I learn just as much from you as you learn from the show. So I greatly appreciate that. I also want to thank all of our producers on the show for helping us make this month's episodes, and all of our members for helping us finance this entire month of episodes, and the beautiful equipment that we get to work with to make this episode and all of our episodes a whole lot better from now on and a whole lot easier. And while we greatly appreciate all of our viewers for subscribing and turning on notifications, if you want to support the show more than just being subscribed and watching all of our videos and enjoying them, which we do greatly appreciate, but in case you want to support us even more and what we're doing here in our educational platform that we're building, then please consider joining as a member of our channel here, either on Patreon or on YouTube by hitting that join button down below or the Patreon link in the description. By becoming a member, you get exclusive access to behind-the-scenes content, including bloopers and outtakes from every episode. You get to see behind the scenes, go on a tour of our entire set here with me, and that way you can see what's going on. You get to see what new episodes are before they come out. You get to see a whole bunch of talks with the producers on the show and see what we're thinking about for future months and future episodes. So you get a whole lot of exclusive content with your membership. So please consider hitting that join button or becoming a Patreon member for that access. And a whole bunch of other stuff, as well as like just funny photos that we decide to share with our members. So thank you for all of our members for supporting our show, and thank you for considering joining. Also, we have a whole merchandise store with awesome t-shirts like this one. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video, comment down below your LGBTQ friendly thoughts, hit that rainbow subscribe button so you don't miss out on new episodes of the show, and share this video with others. As always, I'm your host, Professor Pride, Matt Haslam. Thank you so much for watching. Have a gay day, everyone, and bye for now. Still not enough rainbows? Click here to see more weekly episodes of Powered by Rainbows, Semester 4, only on MHP TV.